I hereby call to order the meeting of the King George County Board of Supervisors Budget Work Session. I'll call for public comment first. If anyone here in the audience would like to provide public comment, you have 3 minutes. Please come forward at this time.
My name is Ana Maria Lobo. I live in Presidential Lakes. Thank you. Well, I want to thank all the supervisors for the job you're doing. I know your job must be very hard, but at the same time, the people of King George elected you to make good decisions for the county, especially when it comes to spend money. You can't raise taxes when you have to spend for unnecessary things. It's easy to spend somebody else's money, but the people of King George want low taxes. That is why everybody wants to move here, because taxes are low and it's safe. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else for public comment here in the audience? Mr. Dines, do we have anyone online, sir?
No.
Very good, then let's move on. I believe the next item on the agenda is Director of Parks and Recreation, Mr. Chris Clark, regarding fireworks. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Tonight I return seeking additional direction about the Independence Day event at Sealston Sports Complex. Following last week's work session, staff contacted American Fireworks Company to begin the contract process. Unfortunately, they have booked all their available technicians for that weekend. Their report included information about a shortage of part-time and seasonal technicians who are not shooting shows this year for various reasons. I then reached out to the other bidder from our 300th anniversary events, but they too are unavailable that weekend. American Fireworks Company confirmed this afternoon that they are available both the Saturday prior to and the Saturday after July 4th. While not ideal, this does provide some additional opportunities to market the county being on an off weekend. For Saturday, July 10th, the Virginia State Little League 9 through 11 state baseball tournament will be in King George. If we move to that date, we will have the opportunity for a great value-added event to offer those participants. The other date available is Saturday, June 26th. Staff recommends Saturday, July 10th, but will follow the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Bush. Would you like to start, sir? Sorry, I caught you off guard, but I had a feeling you might have an opinion here.
Sorry, I was parched. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. If they're unavailable for the 4th of July, they're unavailable. So with that, I would defer to staff's recommendation. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Ms. Bender.
I'm fine with staff's recommendation.
Mr. Stonehill.
I just had to pull my calendar up here for a minute. What were the dates? It was the
10th of July is the recommendation. The other would be the 26th of June. The weekend before.
10th.
And I might be across the bridge at the NACO annual conference that weekend, but I am too in favor of the 10th. Can you repeat? You said it was a state tournament. What was that again?
Yes, District 15, which is the district our Little League is in, was awarded the 9 to 11 state baseball tournament. And so King George was the league selected from the district to host that. They will be here. Their report date is July 8th. So they most, if not all, of the teams should still be here that weekend.
Okay, yep. I think you have your direction from the board. Thank you, sir.
I'll send that email right now.
All right, then, Department of Community Development, discussion regarding proposed fee structure.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, sir.
I'll start this. I asked Heather to come back because at the last meeting, I think one or more board members wanted some additional time to look at the proposed rate structure. So since we included the revenue from the new rate structure in the proposed budget option, I asked Ms. Hall to come back and answer any questions any board member might have.
Thank you so much for that, sir. So I'll go ahead with Mr. Granger.
Again, thank you for providing all the data. I did get an opportunity to review some. I don't have any requests for any modifications. So thank you for all the hard work on it, and I think we should adopt it as is. I know Mr. Bush had voiced some advocation for reducing some of the costs for adding on to existing homes for those who are obviously already live here. I think though, if that's the cost to do the work, then I think we should, the person who's doing the activity should bear the brunt of that cost then, so.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. Mr. Stonehill?
I read over all of them, most of them. What was the state levy again? I know you said that, but I forgot what I had written down.
It's 2%. 2%.
Okay.
And that's not for planning and zoning fees. Those are strictly from your building fees.
Gotcha. I think we should go just the way they're presented.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. Ms. Bender?
I just had one question on the remodel interior basement bath only. Is that to help people who just want to model the bathroom and not the rest of it?
Yes, ma'am.
Was it before they had to pay the whole fee?
They had to pay the whole fee based on square footage and minimum fee.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, I love the proposals. I think it's time. However, again, I would like to question remodel interior and other residential permit. Wait, no, not other residential, I'm sorry, addition to structure. Those two rates are being raised from 15 cents to 25 cents. And again, that's on current residents, and the purpose of government is to provide service to its citizens. So while yes, we are having to do the work and people should pay for the service, that's the purpose of government, is to provide that service to its citizens. So I think because they will be taxed upon the reassession of their home with the added value from those improvements, I still would like to see those two particular items remain at 15 cents instead of 25 cents. Other than that, I'm perfectly fine with the way this is presented. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Citizens, Ms. Thompson, do you have any comments, ma'am? Or questions? Questions or comments? Go right ahead.
No, just that I think what Mr. Bush saying makes a lot of sense. I mean, they are still paying, just not a new upper fee from what they were paying. It's not like they're not paying nothing, but that's all.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Chapman? Thank you. Mrs. Huber? And Mr. Say? Okay. I don't have any additional questions, and I would like to move forward with the fee schedule as proposed by Ms. Hall. So I believe we have consensus to do so. However, I do believe we need a vote, correct? Because we have to advertise it, the proposed fee schedule, right, Mr. Kusenberry? So we do need to have a motion and a vote.
You do. In fact, you can adopt the proposed fee schedule by resolution. You do not require to have a public hearing because it's not changing any of the fees in the zoning ordinance or subdivision ordinance. So it just takes a resolution to adopt a new fee schedule.
So would we have the resolution ready for the next Board of Supervisors meeting on April 20th?
Yes, we can have it ready then.
All right, then, very good. Thank you, Ms. Hall.
Thank you.
And Mr. Kusenberry, presentation of fiscal year 22 budget option.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to present the board a budget option tonight. This is a balanced budget option for the board's consideration. Chris, next slide. I'd like to review now the next slide. The budget process that we went through. In December of 2020, the county administrator requested the departments and agencies to prepare their budgets. And the departments and agencies were required to submit their budgets by January the 15th. Then the budget staff started their review process on February the 1st. And it says it went through February 11th, the 11th, but it has been ongoing since then. And you really have to commend the work that both Donna and Levita and their staffs put into this budget. We couldn't have got here without all their hard work. Then the county administrator starts his review. And this year, that was a little late because there might have been a little bit of preliminary work done, but we really didn't start that process until after March the 9th. Then as the board and the committee knows, we've had a number of work sessions starting on March the 3rd. After those work sessions, or during the work sessions, the county administrator will present a final budget, which this could be just for advertising purposes, this could be your final budget. Following that presentation, the board will establish the tax rates, and then we're scheduled to have the public hearing on the budget and the tax rates on April the 20th. Then following that public hearing, the board has to wait 7 days minimum to adopt the budget. And then the board would appropriate the funds either at the first or the third meeting in June. Now, going back to the work sessions and when we have to advertise, we also have to advertise the budget public hearing 7 days prior to the public hearing. So if we had another work session on April the 14th, we could not meet that code requirement. So if the board wanted to have another work session and they wanted to hold the public hearing on April the 20th, you'd have to have that next work session maybe by Monday the 11th or something like that. Probably Monday if you wanted another work session. Next slide, Chris. The budget option is balanced by law. The total county budget is $97.4 million, which is a 10% increase over the current year adopted budget. The school associated expenditures is approximately $52.5 million, a 5.61% increase over the adopted budget. The non-school expenditures are almost $45 million, which is a 15.48% increase over the current fiscal year adopted budget. Prior to the budget process, the board decided to include a tax increase associated with the debt on the construction of the courthouse in the budget. Each penny on the tax rate is 3 cents, so the budget includes $810,000 of additional revenue associated with the 3-cent tax increase. Thank you, Chris. Some of the budget highlights we've discussed. Full year funding is included for 3 new positions in the sheriff's office, with 1 position funded from the cigarette tax, 1 new position in the Commissioner of Revenue's office, with funded from the cigarette tax, 1 new position in the county engineering department, 2 new positions in the Department of Community Development, and 1 part-time position in human resources. Half-year funding is also included for 6 new positions in the Department of Emergency Management. We've also included funding for merit increases and some pay adjustments for county employees. The budget includes a reduction of health insurance of $108,509. The budget includes implementation of a step grade system for public safety and an increase in the certification pay, and that totals almost $1.3 million, and that's from the cigarette tax. And funding is also included for increases in the Department of Social Services, over $1.2 million. Okay, Chris? Funding is also included for increases in the regional jail and the juvenile detention center. The budget includes a $590,000 transfer from the general fund balance for equipment purchases and one-time purchases. And that's $310,000 on the county side and $280,000 on the school side. There's $1.25 million transfer to the capital improvement fund. Again, that's from the cigarette tax. The school budget is based on an ADM of $4,380. $18,229,917 is included in local funding for the schools, and that's an increase of $684,333 over the current year. We discussed that landfill revenue has decreased compared to prior years. The property tax and other local taxes, now that includes the cigarette tax and the 3-cent tax increase, has increased by approximately $8.6 million over the current year. And $273,333 is included for the new permit fee schedule. So this is a table that compares the revenues from the adopted FY21 budget to the proposed FY22 budget. And you can see where we're seeing the increases, and the big increases in other local taxes, obviously, and that includes that $4 million from the cigarette tax. But you can see where the other increases are. There's some increase from the state. Most of that increase is to schools. If you recall, the schools are getting over $2 million from the state this year compared to last year. And the bottom line is the non-revenue receipts. If you recall, last year's budget was balanced using transfer from revenue stabilization and from the general fund that totaled over $2.4 million. And we're only proposing of using $590,000 this year, and that's only for non-reoccurring one-time purchases. Next slide. So I wanted to show you a slide showing, if you take a dollar bill, kind of showing where the revenue comes from. And 55% of our revenue is from local sources, that's your taxes and other charges. 39% from the state, 5% from the federal government, and 1% from other areas. So of the state revenue, where does that go? Well, $30.2 million goes to the schools, and that's 61% of their operating budget. Over $3 million goes to social services, and that's almost 50% of their budget. $1.1 million goes to the sheriff, and that's 21% of their budget. $307,183 for the Commonwealth Attorney, 48% of their budget. $265,720 for the Clerk of Circuit Court, which is 48% of his budget. $140,596 for the library, which is 21% of their budget. $101,451 for the treasurer, 26%, and $60,000 for the registrar, which is 24% of her budget. So the cigarette tax, we talked about the cigarette tax at the last work session. $1.25 million is with 2 new positions, and public safety recruitment actually that's 3 new positions. That's 2 new positions. That's correct. And public safety recruitment and retention. $1 million transfer to the Revenue Stabilization Fund. $250,000 transfer for county debt mitigation. $250,000 transfer to Service Authority debt mitigation, and $1.25 million transfer to the Capital Fund. So this is the table comparing the proposed expenditures for FY21-22 from FY21 and proposed FY22. And as you can go down the list, you can see that the first, I'll say 5 categories is the bulk of that roughly $10 million increase, with the schools increasing approximately $3 million, public safety increasing approximately $1.6 million, debt service fund increasing by approximately $500,000, Department of Social Services increasing by approximately $1.2 million, general government increasing by $1.5 million, but that includes the $1 million transfer from the Revenue Stabilization Fund. And then the others are increases associated with new positions and the increase in the cost for the jail and the juvenile detention facility. So this is where your expenditures goes. And you can see the percentages and how it's set up. But if you look at the first, I think it's the first school operating fund, public safety, debt service, social services, other constitutional officers. And then if you add jail and juvenile detention and capital transfers, that's 90% of the expenditure. That's where 90% of the money goes, is to those categories. So everything else we do in the county is done with that remaining 10%. So the tax rates, this is the current tax rates compared to the proposed tax rates. There's a 3-cent increase in real estate, and the board did not discuss any increases to personal property. And one other slide I wanted to show, I don't think a final decision was made regarding which outside agencies should be funded. So our budget includes, this is what's included in our budget, which is the same funding as last fiscal year. So I brought this to you to see if the board wanted to make any changes to this or if this should remain as proposed.
Would you like us to go ahead and entertain that right now?
I would like to
before you move
stop
on?
there and let you discuss this slide.
Very good. Mr. Granger, do you want to lead off, sir?
I'm amenable to this. These were the same. I mean, the only ones I really discussed would be the non-mandated ones. I think we discussed those fairly lengthy last year for justifying why they were being added. I do advocate for trying to keep that non-mandated ones real small and justifiable. Not that any of them are, I mean, they're all great programs, but it's using taxpayer dollars. So if there's some kind of justifiable taxpayer return, then I think that makes sense. So yeah, fine with this.
So you're okay with those three, keeping them in as they are for now?
Yeah, based off our previous discussions, yeah.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Thank you. Mr. Stonehill?
I'll echo that. Those are three really good programs that serve King George residents a lot. And I would like to keep all three of those in the way they are.
Okay. Ms. Binder?
I'm fine with all this.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Bush?
I guess I'll be the outside guy. I'm for scratching all three outside agencies and not funding the non-mandated. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson? Okay. Mr. Chapman? Mrs. Huber? Mr. Say? Okay. I would like to go ahead and maintain the three enumerated non-mandated. Thank you.
Okay, sounds like we have a consensus to do that.
Yes.
Okay. Next slide. I wanted to go over, for the benefit of the board and also the committee, the Personal Property Tax Relief Act of 1998 and what it is. This provides tax relief for any passenger car, motorcycle, or pickup truck that has a gross weight of less than 7,501 pounds. The vehicle cannot be used for business purposes. The tax relief percentage is noted on the personal property tax bills, which shows the reduction. If you've seen your tax bill, you've seen that reduction shown on there. For qualified vehicles, it only applies to the first $20,000 of the vehicle value. There's no tax relief for a vehicle that has an assessed value of under $1,000. The amount that King George County is reimbursed is $2,147,868, and that amount doesn't change. That's the amount that's been there for many years, maybe from 1998. If anybody remembers, when Governor Gilmore was elected governor, he had the no car tax platform, and this is part of that. Last year, the tax relief was 30%. I remember not long ago, it was like 42%. So the more vehicles in the county, the more expensive vehicles, that percentage goes down. And for FY22, that percentage will be 28%. And several years ago, the General Assembly made a push to take that money away from local governments. And at some point in time, that will probably come back. So the next steps, at some point, if the board wants to have a public hearing on April the 20th, then the board will need to approve a public hearing advertisement, which hopefully the board would decide tonight. Then if we do that, tonight, or I would say no later than April the 11th, then we could hold that public hearing on April the 20th, and then the board could adopt the budget at their May the 4th meeting, and then appropriate the funding and set the tax rates in June. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, sir. So I'm going to open it for questions and discussion from my colleagues. Go ahead, Mr. Granger.
I had a question about the new expenditures, in particular, the the debt mitigation for the county, and then some debt mitigation as well for the service authority.
Yes.
And so I know when speaking with Davenport in the past, they've always spoken to the fact that providing money from the county to the service authority can have an impact to our bond rating, because then it's kind of tying them back together, and it's making it so the service authority isn't a standalone entity where, you know, we can justify some things like economic development, which like the water line we ran down to Route 3.
Right.
So I guess my question is had Davenport been asked about this, and if so, do they have a feeling like this won't have any impact to, I know they can't make a guarantee because it's the rating agencies, but did they have like an opinion on this activity and the possible impacts it could have to the rating agencies?
Yes, they do. Their feeling is that because this is a new revenue source and a recurring revenue source, that this would have no impact on the county's bond rating. In fact, having this new revenue source would be looked upon positively by the bond rating agencies. And also, I believe at one of your recent service authority work sessions, Mr. Weekly presented you a list of capital projects. I think he did, which total maybe 17 or 18 million dollars. If you look at that list, a lot of those projects would not just benefit the service authority, they could also benefit the county. So I think this would be, I think the county, that a portion of the cigarette tax should go to service authority debt mitigation.
I think that's a fair point. I just wanted to make sure I understood possible impacts that it could have. So I appreciate that, and thank you for pulling that thread. It's the only question I had. I don't mind going to discussion, but I'll let other people ask questions if they want to first.
Mr. Stonehill?
Going back to Davenport, I thought they were very happy with doing that, and that they had originally, when they came to our meeting, said that was going to help our credit rating. So yeah, I think that definitely those two debt mitigation things are very important for both sides of the house for sure. I know we spoke about the two positions for public safety. Did you also give us an option with only?
I think you certainly need that position for the Commissioner of Revenue. And if the board doesn't want, if you do not want to fund that position for the sheriff, then that would just increase the amount that we would either apply to either revenue stabilization or the capital fund.
Because I had talked to Travis before, and also the folks that I've been speaking to in the different counties. They don't have anybody doing the actually enforcement of the cigarette stuff. So we kind of kicking the idea around a little bit about holding off on that position that we had talked about for the sheriff's office for the first year to see if we really need it. In the ordinance, I don't know if y'all get to check it out, but in the ordinance, it's written into the ordinance that the sheriff's office would be reimbursed for their time from start to finish, from enforcement to court. So that's actually written into that ordinance that that money would be given back to the sheriff's office. And, we had kicked the idea around a little bit saying, well, do we need to hold off on that position, or can we hold off on that position until next year to see if we actually really need it for doing enforcement? So I know that Travis and I spoke about it, and we had talked about it in our CTB meetings as well. So just, I think the last email we got, I think that was $200,000 for, position, equipment, car, laptop, all that kind of stuff. So that's just, another 200,000 that we can be using somewhere else if we don't need it, as long as the sheriff's office is getting reimbursed for their time. So just something to think about. I think that's the only questions I got, comment for you right now.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. Ms. Bender?
I have a couple of questions. One is, Travis, can you send this to us?
Yes.
This PowerPoint? I'd appreciate it because it breaks it down really nicely. Thank you. But Chris, could you go back to near the beginning? Keep going. Hold on right there. That one, the budget highlight. One more back, sorry. So I just wanted to clarify for the sheriff's office, is that the 2 bailiffs?
Correct.
Okay. And not the cigarette tax enforcer?
Well, it's,
The one at Mr. Stonehill, I just wanted to clarify. So it's the 2 bailiffs.
in there now.
Okay. And then the commissioner of revenue is the person that would be in charge of it, and that would be their duty.
Correct.
Right. And then can you go for one more forward? And then I just want to make sure I had everything. Oh, the 3% tax. That would be, that's the only increase in the tax that is baked into it, and everything can be done with just that 3%.
Correct. And that 3 cent,
Or I apologize, cents.
that
Sorry to the public, 3 cents. Don't have a heart attack. That was my bad. 3 cents.
and just to make it clear, that 3 cents isn't for the operating fund. That 3 cents is transferred for the debt on the courthouse, specifically for that.
I just want to make sure and clarify, and that's something when we approved the courthouse that was already announced that would have to happen. So I just wanted the public to know.
Yeah, in fact, you announced a 4 cent.
Correct. Which is important. And sorry, it was 3 cents. And I'll pass it to Mr. Bush.
Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Travis, you're saying that right now the budget as presented is balanced with a 3 cent tax increase. Okay. So then some questions, and I'm gonna take a little liberty being this is my last budget as a supervisor. So there's something that I've had on in my deck for a long time, and I'd like to see it come to fruition. But I'd like to see a 0 tax rate for boats in King George County. We looked into this. We heard from some marinas, I believe it was last budget year or maybe the one prior. This has been toyed around with for a while. But we have boat owners that are taking their boats outside of King George County to get them winterized, to get them stored, to get maintenance. That's a whole industry that's leaving this county simply because other people don't have the tax rate. I believe that if we were to 0 out the tax rate on boats, that would actually help our marinas and bring in business, storage, winterization, maintenance, fuel, all that. And that would actually bring in another revenue source to King George County that's currently leaving to go to another locality. So that's one thing I would like to see. Another, I'd like to lower even with the increases, and it is a substantial increase, I'd like to reduce the school's budget to an even $18 million. So that'd be bringing down an additional $200 and something thousand. Also, I'd like to piggyback on what was brought up earlier about the Service Authority debt mitigation. I believe it is 2 distinct institutions. Now, I have a lot of customers of the Service Authority in my district, but I believe that either this needs to be a county utility or it needs to be its own independent business. The county cannot continue to subsidize the Service Authority and let it remain under the current model that it's in. So I am against using county funds, regardless of the source, to subsidize the Service Authority through the debt mitigation. I am, however, in favor of utilizing that money for different purposes for the Service Authority and apply it to capital improvements. So that's things that can lead to economic development, expansion. So I would like to leave the same money that's earmarked currently in the proposal. However, instead of it going to debt mitigation, I believe that's something the Service Authority needs to work out as its own entity, but utilize that money to help the Service Authority help us with economic development and use that for capital improvements. So that's the only things I have. Thank you very much for the presentation. Madam Chair, that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Mr. Kusenberry, did you want to say anything before I?
No, we're trying to look and see how much revenue is received from the tax on the boats, and we don't have that information.
So we did gather some preliminary information this time last year, but then we ended up putting it all on hold because of COVID. The Economic Development Authority will be re-engaged to try to look into that. I know for many months they did not meet at all, and then they finally did resume virtual meetings and then recently resumed in-person meetings. But between that and the multiple changes in administration, it just was not something we were ready to engage on for this current budget cycle. So I just want to let you know, Mr. Bush, I haven't forgotten that for sure. But given the challenges that we've faced in the past year, so we have some preliminary data on that, and I'll send that to you so you have it and we can get a team together to try to address it. So Ms. Thompson, did you have any comments, ma'am, or questions? Mr. Chapman?
So maybe I missed it. So I noticed that we did talk about the increase to the sheriff's office, but I didn't see anything about firefighter EMS. Was that in there and I just missed it?
Yes, it's in there. Chris, can you go back? Well, go back to that same slide. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, the previous slide. Yes, the budget includes implementation of a step grade system for public safety, and public safety is sheriff's office and fire and EMS.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Huber? Mr. Say? Alrighty then. Thank you, Finance Department staff, Ms. Cobb, Ms. Hahn, Mr. Kusenberry you were a wizard. You all, yeah. Really impressed with how quickly you were able to pull this together, present us a balanced budget, and with only 3 cents, and that was already sort of a known quantity even at 4 cents for the courthouse. So thank you very much. So I'll go ahead and open it for discussion. Mr. Granger, do you need a minute? I can start on the other end. Okay. Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess it was more along the lines of question, though. So Travis, our debt mitigation, what bottom line putting towards the county's debt mitigation included in this budget? What was that amount?
$250,000.
And that's in line with the plan that we've previously worked out with.
Correct. It's I think the previous plan was $190,000 a year.
Okay. Okay, well, I am a firm believer that, present a real budget, and if you have needs, you have to work those needs out. I don't believe in doing more with less. However, I don't believe in, if the money's there, spend it either.
Can I make a comment, Mr. Bush?
Yes, sir.
Oh, there, the $250,000 for KGSA debt mitigation, we could add, if the board is in agreement, transfer from KGSA debt mitigation / capital projects to give that option.
I mean, it's going to go with the majority of the board. I personally don't like the idea of subsidizing the service authority, even though I think the service authority, going back to its initial roots, the mess it's currently in is because of the way it was constructed by the county. But if it is its own entity, it should be run as its own entity. But they do partner with us a lot. It's a big factor as far as economic development. So I would like to see it personally strictly towards capital improvements and not their debt mitigation. That's just me personally. But overall, going into this budget, I was very nervous. I thought we were looking at a huge tax increase. But we got bailed out by the cigarette tax. That's basically what's saving our behinds right now. But I'd like to see some of this money used smartly. And that's why, you know, not knowing what's going to happen this year or the next year, I get nervous anytime I get money from the state because there's always regulations that follow it. Those regulations tend to go unfunded. And example, the $2 million that the state got for the schools, or that the state gave the schools, that money might not be there next year. However, we set the precedent in lining that budget at that rate. So if that money goes away, then next year they're going to say, well, you cut our budget. No, we're just giving you less of a local contribution. We're not cutting anything, which is why the only thing I would like to see is even lining the school's budget to $18 million. I believe that's fair and in line with everything else going to the school. And then the public, the biggest priority for me this year was public safety and making it competitive for retention and recruiting. So are you confident with what you've worked out with the steps, the raises that are going to be proposed in that, with the money that we've allocated this budget, we would be able to achieve that goal?
Yes, we've had many discussions with our chief and the sheriff regarding this option and their plans.
And the chief thinks this is?
Absolutely, yes.
That I'm good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Ms. Bender.
One thing I want to point out, especially concerning the schools, is to understand that with that dollar bill, I love that analogy. Thank you, Travis, for including that. The biggest thing is look how much the schools get. And I'll go back to the thing is we only give as supervisors the pot of money. It's the schools and the school board and the administration that decides what happens with the pot of money. So if there's needs in that, maybe a better prioritization of the money we give is what I'm trying to say, is that we only give the pot. We don't decide what you spend it on. So maybe this year, if certain items are very important, maybe but this year, one other area doesn't have as much of the pie and the other area gets more of the pie. But I want just the public to understand that 55 cents of that, no, wait a minute, hold on, 53.92 cents of that dollar goes to the schools and the rest funds everything else. And I just don't think people realize that that is what it is. So moving on from that, Service Authority. When I first started this journey, I knew nothing about the Service Authority, but I've become a champion, even though I'm not on the Service Authority. And as many know, I've done a lot of history on the Service Authority. And if you really want to lay some blame or wherever it starts, it's right up here on this dais, not with us, but with the people that were here in 1992, April 21st, particularly. And so, looking at everything, there are maybe three choices of, how to save us a Service Authority. But if we don't want to sell it, this is one option to try to help the customers alleviate the debt. If you want to go back, we put on their backs. I mean, just going back to 1992. But this is a way we can work together to try to help out the customer. I understand what Mr. Bush is saying. We do have issues that also help the customer if you upgrade certain facilities or decommission plants or whatever it is. But with that being said, one other part of that debt service is we're going to do 3 cents and then they're having their water rates raised because that was part of our plan. So this will show the customers in good faith that we are trying to address it. But one other point that Mr. Bush said, and then we've pointed this out in Service Authority meetings, is that the county already provides some services to the Service Authority that people don't realize. So we already have a relationship already. And maybe we do look at it as a public utility in the future, but that's something in the future. This is the now, this is the budget. And I really want to condemn all of our finance staff for the amazing thing you did in a very short amount of time than in previous years, at least my 4 years. And I think this is an awesome job you've done to try to help the citizens at a bad time, not raise their rates to a part that could be very, I mean, I don't want to say harmful, but really would impact their quality of life in their pocketbook. So I really appreciate our staff for all that you've done. And I hope all our citizens look and see all the hard work everyone has done to try to come up with a budget to help everyone in the county in whatever facet, from schools to public service, and to have a quality of life in King George. But thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. Mr. Stonehill.
I would certainly like to see that money stay going towards the service authority. There have been a lot of ideas that we've been talking about, and, making everybody, even people who are on wells and septic, pay for this. And I certainly wouldn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But, having a huge debt, it's eating us alive. There's 4,000 people that have to pay that debt off. And I happen to be one of them. My rates just went up last week as well. And you look at your water bill, you have your debt service. They're the same. The debt is actually almost higher than what your water usage is. And this affects the entire county. This affects people coming into the county, affects business coming into the county, affects every aspect of our county, even affects folks that are on wells and septic. So we certainly need to get this monster off our back. And yes, it was created by the people sitting right here years ago. We made the bed, we're sleeping in it. We need to fix it. So this money that we have earmarked going out towards our debt, both sides of the house, really needs to stay. If you run up a huge credit card bill and you're only paying off a little bit of the principal, the debt's going to just eat you alive. It's never going away. So I certainly say that needs to stay there. I'll get off of that. School, it seems like every year the school comes to us and they ask for this huge pot of money. And yes, we don't direct them how they can use it. They just come and we sit and we all say, wait, that's too much, that's too much, that's too much. But then we always say, okay, here it is. And we generally give them what they want. So, I wouldn't be too far off by reducing that a little bit and moving that a little, some of that money that some of these other departments have not been getting. I actually had a couple of folks talk to me the other day and they said, why am I paying for all these school kids? I don't have any kids. I hear that a lot. And then you go back and you say, well, it's educating the youth. It's educating the citizens of King George. But I understand both sides of the coin. I mean, I don't have any kids that are in the school system, but I know lots of kids that are. And, if we need to shave off a little bit of that to, put it somewhere else that we need to, I would be in favor of that. But, besides that, I think, what you guys have done is incredible. We have a whole new finance staff and, county administrator, thank you so much for helping us out. And I think you guys have done a fantastic job. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. Mr. Granger.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate letting me go last. I was looking for something. I didn't find it, but it's okay. I guess I'll start with service authority debt. Coming onto the board, that was, one of the big things 5 years ago. A lot of people have asked about it. I was like, we need to do something about that. And, when I first got on, I'll be honest, I was not fully educated. And so I didn't understand the ramifications of some of those decisions that I maybe had been advocating at that time. If we have a way to help the service authority by using this new funding line with the cigarette tax, and it would help to reduce those costs. And at the end of the day, if the service authority goes under, I mean, that's going to be terrible for the county even from an economic development perspective. So there's got to be some way we have to help keep them afloat. And if this provides an opportunity to start helping them, and it can be looked at as not, having an impact to our bond rating, I think we should do it. I really do. It was a terrible situation that brought about the formation. Well, I shouldn't say terrible. It probably was not the wisest decision the way it was done. it's easy to look at the past and say that was not done the best way, especially when you're not the one who had to do it. So I can appreciate at the time, I'm sure it was very difficult, and hopefully everyone was just doing the best they could, and it is what it is. Now we're dealing with what we can't have. So, but I think we need to provide some funding line to it. It'll help it out. It's good for our economic development is if they bring down their debts, and then they can work on these other capital projects that they need with Perkins Corner and running the water lines to the other systems. I mean, that helps the whole county. It really does help the whole county if they're able to do those projects. And you know, it's the important thing, right? I mean, it's all of us. I know it's 4,000 people who are the customers, but you know, Walmart needs it. And if there's water there, then that means Walmart goes away, and then there's no place for people to shop in. Same with, you know, food lines and all these other places. It has a big impact if it goes away. So I think we need to do what we can to help out, and absolutely just do the 250 to the mitigation. I wish we could do more, honestly. I wish we could do more to our own. Just, you know, we have so many competing needs. You know, we get what we get. For the schools, as Mr. Stonehill brought up, it sounded like you said we hem and haw and then we give them what they want. I would disagree with that. I say we hem and haw and then we give them some. That's pretty much what it's been every year. We hem and haw and we give them some because it is. I agree that schools do come with a big ask, and then we say we can't do all that, so we'll give you this, which is the same thing we're doing this year. If we want to reduce it, you know, we could look to do that. And that's what I was trying to find. My booklet, I forgot. I left it at home. It was a big binder. It was too big. I didn't think I should have brought it because when we were discussing it, the standards of quality positions were the two things that I, in particular, I think I was calling out, as well as the $300,000 that we had originally removed from last year's budget. I think Ms. Kupka said the reinstatement of that funding, and then I think it was the equipment.
So yeah, I can answer, I can clarify that, Mr. Granger, and then remind me it's still your turn. So I tend to, my suggestion was to reduce the school's request by $650,000, and I believe their request was 1.3 million over last year.
Mm-hmm.
So basically I halved what they were asking for over and above last year.
Okay.
And where I got those numbers from, again, we don't tell the school how to spend their money. We just give them a number. But my rationale, my thinking in my head was, you're asking us for $350,000 for Chromebooks
Mm-hmm.
that we know you're going to get more CARES Act money or stimulus money or whatever they're calling it this round. And supporting virtual continues to be an available use of that funding. Yeah, an option for them. So in my mind, they can get $350,000 for Chromebooks from that money when they get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other $300,000 I came to was for I'm sorry, Mr. Bush. Thank you, Mr. Bush. Thank you. And then the other $300,000 was when I took the director of administration and the coordinator of communication salaries in the school board office. They came in around like 295, 296. So I just kind of rounded up to 300,000. And so 300 plus 350, $650,000 was my kind of rationale in my head.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you for the clarification. I think those two positions were dropped last year because of the cut to funding. So I think at least that's in line with the 300,000. So I'm sorry, long story short, I apologize, everyone. I would still be willing to advocate, let's do the 300,000 and then those two SOQ positions, which I apologize. I don't know what the total was on that. I think it was about a total of a $500,000 increase from last year. But I don't have my binder with me. I apologize. So if someone has that information, that I don't have it in digital. I've been trying to pull it up. I can't find that presentation. So that's what I had.
All right. Thank you, sir. Comments from citizens. Ms. Thompson.
Question about the service authority debt. Do we have any kind of timeline when that might be paid off?
Ms. Hahn, do you have data available to you? Yeah, I feel like Ms. Binder is
I think it's
ballpark
2036.
I think it was either 2036 or 2037, because I remember looking at it and saying, it's a long time.
But I do remember Mr. Weekly thinks it could be a couple years before that. I mean, that's not a lot, but because of the last couple of years, payments are like 16,000 or something like that. So I think it was a 2036.
I was just curious. And
That's with
and
no recurring debt.
at that time, we think our water bills might go down.
So is that a question?
Yes, is that the
Or a comment.
intention?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you have anything else? Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Mr. Chapman? Mrs. Huber?
So I guess I'm gonna just be obvious and address the schools. I'm in agreement with what Ms. Kupka was talking about for the 650,000 reduction. I thought that as a school employee, I thought that was a reasonable amount because it does afford the middle school positions, you know, with the expansion. And I can tell you that it has been a year of all years to be a teacher, and it has been an unfavorable one. And no one really won this year. And I can tell you that teaching online made this year by far the hardest year I've ever had in my 15 years experience. And I think as a school employee, I think I can say confidently that we're all kind of looking for, I don't know, the light at the end of the tunnel. And I know it's coming because Dr. Benson had presented that we are going to come back, hopefully 5 days in person. But I would hate to see even more reduced from what was proposed the last time we spoke about it, just because we know we're going to have a shortage of teachers. I know we're struggling even to find teachers, you know, for the summer. We have a list that's a mile long online for job openings this year. So, and I know that, you know, everybody has had a really hard year. So I'm not saying that, you know, teachers are special or anything. We just have been put through something that we weren't prepared for. We had to learn how to teach in a new way. And, you know, there was no cost of living increase, you know, for the school year for the teachers. So seeing that in the budget is kind of a breath of fresh air. So I just really would like to see the proposed amount stay where it is. I kind of feel like there's some, I don't know, animosity towards the schools. I'm not really sure why. I can tell you the staff at the King George Middle School that I work at are fantastic. I've had to observe teachers for my graduate program, and I have seen teachers do incredible things virtually that we have never had to experience before. So I just would like to see it stay where it's at, just so that we don't, again, get into a retention issue where we're searching for people to fill positions because they feel that maybe the county doesn't support them. And I know that that's not true, but I can tell you it's been an eye-opening experience being here, and I can see the big picture now, and not just my little school bubble. So, you know, and not everybody gets that opportunity. So just some perspective on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Huber. Mr. Say. Okay. Couple comments. I think Ms. Bender in particular was very passionate about her defense of the Service Authority. I too am on the Service Authority Board of Directors, and our Service Authority does not just for its residential customers, but for many commercial customers, our schools, this building here, so much of our community provide a vital service. So I am in support of maintaining the cigarette tax funding towards Service Authority debt. With regard to the schools, I came from the schools, everyone knows that. I do certainly understand the reluctance, but the mission, our responsibility is to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of our community. And part of that also is in the education of our youth. So, and I do get your point, Mr. Stonehill, people who don't have kids in the schools don't understand But I said this probably 6 or 7 years ago as a private citizen when I came out for public comment for it. Actually, Mr. Granger was on the board, and it was maybe it was only 4, 5 years. It was when you all did the significant tax increase. So you know which one I'm talking about. Yes. Is I fully support what we need to do to maintain the quality of our schools, and I am willing to pay for a professional fire department without hopefully ever having to call them to my home to put out a fire. And I am willing to pay for a professional sheriff's office without hopefully never having to report a crime for me or my family. Therefore, I am also willing to support high quality schools in our community. So I'm standing firm on my suggestion from the last meeting. Anyone else?
I just wanted to add one.
Bender?
Is that okay if I can just add one part to the discussion? And
Okay,
I
Ms.
don't want you to think that I was anti-schools. What I'm trying to get across is I have knocked on a lot of doors. And one thing I wanted to make, I'm going to make that's the wrong way. I'd like to encourage Dr. Benson is to get the schools open next year. And that was very encouraging to hear, because why I mentioned knocking on doors, that was one of the big things that people said is, for whatever reason, we want our schools open and we want the virtual option and the other option, so our kids are back in the classrooms for whatever reason, and that's really important. And I want to make sure that if we give all this money, that the schools will be open, because there are some people that have mentioned, if you're not going to open next year, I want the money back to go somewhere else to go to school. So I don't want that to come out, as an opportunity. So if we're going to give the money next year, there's that option that the kids can go back to school 5 days a week. That's my big thing, and that's why I mention it. I mean, you might not know, I've been at the schools for a very long time, just not recently. Coach, substitute, long-term sub, all those things. And quality of teachers for the for kids are very important in their life. But we also need to take care of everything else. And people they always look at the supervisor, you shorted us the money, but it's a holistic team effort. We give the money and then somebody else allocates it and figures out what to do with it. So people are unhappy, everybody should share it. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. Before moving on, Mr. Bush, you're next in the queue. Not yet. So for the purposes of advancing the discussion, Ms. Bender, then what number are you at?
Can you bring up
Right there,
right, hold on. Which line is it?
in local funding.
Oh, 18,229. The only thing of compromise I was going to say, I'm fine, I can go with that, but what if we did 18,200,000?
I'm at 18 million.
So you want to take out $29,917.
I mean, I'm just throwing it out there as a compromise, if not.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So 53% of our overall budget goes to the schools. The schools are realizing $2 million additional from the state. If you look at the chart that was just up before you changed it, thank you very much. Even with the proposed cut or decrease of the request from our last meeting, the schools would still be getting $684,333 over current year just in local funding, plus the $2 million in the additional federal dollars. So my recommendation would be to decrease overall local funding to $18 million, which would still be an increase of over $400,000 just in local funding, plus the additional $2 million from the state, and the fact that ADM is probably going to be lower going into next year. So that's the one thing. So as far as the schools, I would say $18 million. Now, I brought up the 53% of the budget earlier because if you listened to the school board this year and paid attention, there was questions about how are we going to utilize CARES Act funding, and they looked into this air filtration system. Something caught my attention very closely. They didn't have enough CARES Act funding to do the full implementation of the air filtration system in all the buildings. And it was very easily said that, well, we can find the money in the operating budget. I have heard that numerous times in previous years where, you know, oh, you cut our budget, but then during the middle of the year, oh, we can find the money in the operating budget. The question has been, where is that money coming from? So I looked in the school's budget, very great presentation. I believe there's some things that there's a lot of room for negotiation within there. So the one thing that really bothers me, one, we have no guarantee that the schools are going to open. I'm very hopeful that they will, but I have a lot of constituents concerned about that because it's being phrased as it's a goal. The other thing is last year when we provided the budget to the schools, a letter went out to teachers saying you're not getting your step increases this year because the school board or the board of supervisors cut our budget. That is not true, because when we tabulated what we were going to afford the schools last year, we actually included the step increases because that's something we agreed with the schools or previous boards had as well. So that's kind of what you alluded to, that there might be tension with the school board. That's my tension with the school board. So I just wanted you to have background on that. So one, my recommendation would be decreasing the local funding request to $18 million. The other thing, as far as service authority, the fact that we discussed service authority in such detail tonight as a board of supervisors is problematic if they are a separate entity. In this time that we're looking to dedicate funds to a debt service, we're giving service authority employees a 3% increase. We're raising the rates. We have a line of credit that still can be utilized, which is going to contribute to the debt. So that 2036 number is with no reoccurring debt. So if anything else comes up, that debt number is going to increase, which is why my recommendation is to, yes, help out the service authority, but with capital improvements. And another deterrent, and the part that gives me heartburn with the service authority, is connection fees for businesses and especially restaurants are a deterrent. I believe per table in restaurants, the service authority is assessing these connection fees. That whole business model needs to be readdressed. And that's why I have a problem with the county just directly subsidizing them with their debt service. And that's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
So, Mr. Bush, can you promise us then we won't spend any more time talking about the service authority because you personally found it so troubling?
Yes.
Thank you. We won't. Thank you. All right then. Where are the rest of my colleagues on school numbers?
Do you want to go? Sure. The only thing I'll say for the school numbers in regards to Mr. Bush's comment about the schools saying they'll find in the operating budget, at the end of the day, they can't go in the red. So, I mean, and they're all estimates. And let's be honest, you're not going to estimate low, because if you estimate low, then you're going to go in the red. You have to estimate high. And so it's almost like a worst case scenario. What's the bad thing? And the county does the same thing. We have to have a balanced budget. But if we did like right on the line, oh man, there's a reason we have surpluses, and we had a surplus at the end of last year. We had a surplus at the end of the previous year. There's a reason. Otherwise, you're going to be dipping into your savings every year, probably, because you're not going to have that optimal situation. And so it's trying to find that I would say it's trying to find that balancing act. You know, what's too much, but you have to. You know, you can't guarantee the expenses every year. That's going to be exactly this amount. So, you know, then when as the year goes on, you're looking, you're like, hey, that's good. We were under. We didn't end up spending all those. And so we do have some funds in the operating budget. Is that always the case with schools? Are they asking for more? I can't say definitively. I don't know definitively. But I mean, we have done the same thing. So, hey, Dr. Young has said, we have room in the operating budget because something came up, you know, and we were able to find the money, and it has to do with situations like those. And so I just don't think it's as easy just to say, hey, they said this, so obviously they're being dishonest. I don't think it's necessarily that. I certainly hope it's not that. And I think there's ways that you can look at it and you can say that's part of the reason why. As far as, I apologize I know that's not really part of the discussion. You're asking for a number. I appreciate Ms. Binder throwing out a number. If it's $29,000, I would say just stick with this number. And like I said, I would go back, the 300,000, in my opinion, when we took it off last year, I think we all had consensus that we're doing this for 1 year because of COVID. And so they were asking for an additional 1.3 from the locality compared to last year. I looked at it as you're really asking for 1 million more because we have to put that money back in. We cut your local contribution by $300,000 last year. And so then I was saying an extra 200,000 on top of that for those two SOQ positions. So that's what I was saying. 18 would have been like 100,000 roughly. So I guess that's what I would say. 18,100,000.
Mr. Stonehill?
Don't want to talk about that other thing, but I hate debt. I like to get rid of debt. Cool. I'm okay. I guess Dr. Benson said that 800,000 maybe was coming back. I think in his presentation, when I asked him when he was here, routinely it's $500,000, something they generally return. So, like you said, cutting a budget that tight is a little scary. That's a lot of money. I'm not really happy with it, but I can stay with that, especially if we're going to be getting a half back at the end of the year or something, general fund. So, or it's just, 500, whatever, but I'm okay with that.
So do we want to move forward with that number as it stands?
I said 18.1, so that's my stance. I'll leave it. It's not like Mr. Stonehill said, you're amenable to this. Did I hear that correctly, Mr. Stonehill? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
So I would be willing to budge 29,917 in order to gain consensus of the board so we can move forward tonight.
If it's going to be that, I'll just say just do the 18,229,000.
Come on, I'm trying to work with you people. We're trying to get to a number, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's 18,229,917.
Yeah, to me, cutting the 29 is just not worth it. You had you had a justification for why you were saying you picked those two things.
Sure.
And I give you my justification why I picked the numbers I picked. And so if we want to go with that justification, then do that one. Let's do that one.
Okay, so
let's not quibble over this one.
We would really like to move forward tonight, allow Mr. Kusenberry to advertise and not have to have another meeting next week.
Yeah, let's not have another meeting.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, so I do believe I need a motion, right? Because we have to allow you to advertise. So may I have a motion?
Mr. Stonehill, you good with this? Ms. Binder? I know Mr. Bush isn't, but I'm just want to know that we got, okay. I move to authorize the county administrator to advertise the budget as presented for a public hearing to be held. Yes, Mr. Kusenberry.
Budget and tax rates.
Oh, thank you. Budget and tax rates as presented for a public hearing to be held
April 20th.
April 20th.
Second.
Any further productive discussion?
So this is a motion just to advertise this?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Kusenberry and staff and citizens for your patience. Thank you, members, for working together cooperatively to get a result for staff here tonight. So Mr. Kusenberry, the next item on the agenda, Personal Property Tax Relief Act, sir.
We did that.
You did everything.
Oh, yeah, we did it
Adjourn
in
at this
that
point.
too, right?
Yep. And
So we don't have to address that separately because that was that slide.
that's correct. And just, you don't need to take any action, but the rate for next year will be 28%.
Gotcha. All right. So next steps, sir?
Next step is that we will not have a work session next week, and you'll have a public hearing on the budget and tax rates at your regularly scheduled April 20th meeting.
Thank you very much.
Do we need to make a motion to, because did we advertise that meeting?
Yeah, that's a normal meeting.
It's the normal
I'm
April
sorry.
20th meeting.
Did we advertise for the work session for next week? Do we need to make a motion to officially cancel it?
It's on the calendar it's on the work session calendar, right, Chris, on the website? So we do need to go ahead and, can I get a motion for that?
Sure, I move to cancel the April 14th budget work session.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. And a motion to adjourn.
20th, right?
Yes.
Move to adjourn until April 20th at 6:30 PM in the boardroom.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Chair votes aye, motion carries. We are adjourned.